The Handkerchief by Great 78. Chapter 46. The Dark Mark. Draco's feet landed forcefully on hard ground, and his knees buckled, dropping him to the ground before he found his balance properly. He looked up to find a large manor house gone to seed. Shutters hung off-kilter from windows that had missing panes of glass. Broken and weather-beaten statues framed the open gates. Vines grew upon the facade as though they were the rightful owners of the place. Whatever this place was, it was no manor home like Draco knew. The front doors had planks of wood nailed across them in several places with a sign reading, "No trespassing." Draco looked to the left of the house, and there was a dim light shining across the side yard, which was overgrown with tall grass and weeds. He started towards it, suddenly feeling rather exposed, standing in the center of the garden this way. There was a door, barely ajar, next to a dirty window through which a faint light shone. Draco cautiously pushed open the door, a lantern set on a tabletop nearby. He looked around, surprised to see old muggle kitchen appliances, light switches on the walls, electrical bulbs in fixtures overhead. This was a muggle house. Why had the ancestral home of Lord Voldemort been converted into a muggle house? A muffled noise sounded across the room, and Draco startled, his lizard brain forgetting everything to focus on the sound, drawing his wand quickly to point it in that direction. Peter Pettigrew was opening a door straight ahead, and he, too, jumped at the sight of Draco.
"Ah, young Malfoy! Yes, welcome! He's expecting you."
Peter turned, shuffling back the way he came, evidently expecting Draco to follow. Peter had lit his wand, and Draco did the same. The walls were papered with peeling, yellowed sheets of wallpaper covered with flowers. The floors were bare in places, covered with balding carpet in others. The two wizards crept up the stairs quietly. Draco knew why he was being quiet, but he wasn't sure why Pettigrew was. Apparently, the mousy wizard did not feel comfortable here either. They reached a door on the landing, behind which firelight crackled. Pettigrew pushed open the door, and they crossed the threshold. Inside, the room was lit by a large fire in the fireplace, as well as 3 floating torches. Several people, 5 of whom wore long, dark robes and silver masks, stood in a semicircle in the center of the room. Lord Voldemort and Bellatrix stood in between these 5, directly in the middle of the row. The 2 of them were unmasked, but both faces were contorted by insanity and manic glee that made their faces appear almost mask-like all the same. Draco's breath caught. Slumped in a tall, wing-back armchair in the corner of the room, her hands magically bound, sat his mother. She had evidently been crying recently, as tears shone on her cheeks in the torchlight, but now she had been stunned and was silent, eyes closed, breathing laboriously. So, here it was. Her freedom would be exchanged for his. "Draco!" The cold, high voice had never sounded so emotionless. "We are glad you have joined us." The sibilant S seemed to stretch on endlessly. "Yes, my lord." Murtlapped tentacles. Essence of dittany. Daisy roots. Crushed valerian root. "As you know, your father, a loyal servant, has been taken. I need another loyal wizard to stand in his place. Can you be that servant in his stead?" "I must, lord." Draco bowed his head, not wanting to look at him or Bellatrix, and certainly not at his mother, stunned in the corner. "Yes. Good. Take off your robe," Uncertain of the reason, he removed his robe, standing now in his trousers and shirt. He dropped the robe to the ground. "Roll up your left sleeve." Lord Voldemort raised his wand. Syrup of hellebore, doxy venom, boomslang skin. "Incaustica, Sipellis, Masmordra." The incantation seemed to float as a physical body across the room between the two wizards, lying heavy upon the air, like smoke above a fire. Suddenly, a shooting pain seared his left arm just below the elbow. It was a fierce burn, accompanied with the feeling of 1,000 quill points scratching at his skin, sizzling it from the inside out. The pain shot through his entire body, stiffening every fibre with intense, blazing misery. He dropped to his knees, crying out in agony at the sudden torture. His occlumency was no longer needed, as it turned out. His brain was nothing but a white-hot nerve, on fire with the sensation that crept up his arm. There was more speaking now, words being exchanged over him, vows being asked of him, to which the instinctual part of his brain could only say yes. Yes, if you could only make this madness stop. Yes, anything for this to be finished. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. As suddenly as the pain began, it subsided enough that his consciousness returned. Draco took a deep breath, eyes closed. Toad saliva, crushed moss, moonstones, eyes of newt. When he opened his eyes, he discovered that he was lying on the floor, knees curled under him, face down with his left arm cradled beneath him. "Rise, Draco!" the high, cold voice demanded. Until Voldemort spoke, the idea of standing seemed impossible to Draco. But now he knew that he must, so he pushed himself into a kneeling position, still cradling his arm as discreetly as possible. There remained a deep ache within his arm that seemed to seep from the skin into the sinew and bone. It felt as though the ache might never completely go away. He pushed himself up onto his haunches, grabbing his robe as he did so, and stood.
"Draco,"
his loathsome Aunt Bellatrix said,
"when your father took the mark, he cried, the wretch."
Her mirthless laugh echoed off the walls of the room. Draco's jaw clenched. He, too, felt near tears, but would not, could not let them fall. "You will always carry this mark to remind you of your rightful lord, young Draco. I see much potential in you. I am certain you will have an illustrious career in my employ." "Yes, my lord." Draco was surprised his voice sounded as steady as it did. That was to say, it did not sound steady, but it did not sound as tremulous as he feared it might. "When you feel your mark burn, you must apparate to me. If you extend your arm and touch the skull with 2 fingers, I will apparate to you." "Yes, my lord." Draco did not yet know how to apparate, but didn't feel like now was the time to bring this up. After all, in 3 weeks he would be going back to school, and it was impossible to apparate in and out of Hogwarts, and he could think of no reasons why he'd want Voldemort to come to him. "I am not an uncaring man, Draco. I know the task I've set for you, whilst simple, may not be easy. Therefore, you may have the assistance of some of my servants. However, you must find a way to allow them into the school so that they may help you." "Yes, my lord." So, Voldemort knew about the lack of ability to apparate, into Hogwarts. That was good. His arm was starting to burn again.
"Come, Draco," Bellatrix cackled. "Let us take Sissy home and have a drink to celebrate. Innovate."
At this last word, she pointed her wand at Narcissa, whose eyes flew open in confusion. "My dragon!" Narcissa's tear-filled voice broke across him with a sorrow he had seldom heard in it. "No, Madame Malfoy. I must beg to differ. He is my dragon now." The high, cold laugh of Voldemort filled the room, joined by the titters and bellows of the other Death Eaters in the room. Back at the manor, Draco struggled to remain upright. The burning in his arm consumed the majority of his conscious thought. The nausea from the sidelong apparition with Bellatrix had claimed the last of the sushi and gelato from earlier. Thankfully, Tiffy met them in the parlour and vanished his sick instantly. Bellatrix was not a smooth apparitionist. The usual feeling of compression and space had been accompanied by a twisting, ringing feeling of his insides.
"A drink!"
Bellatrix had cried, and Tiffy popped away for mulled wine.
"Where is that useless elf of mine? Miggy! Mickey!"
"Middy," said Narcissa weakly, as though just the 2 syllables had taken all of her strength to muster. Middy popped into existence in front of them and curtsied.
"There you are, you slovenly piece of filth! Bring me some buttered scones, a copy of Witch Weekly, and a calming draught for my sister."
Middy curtsied once more and popped away.
"I just get it for the recipes."
She leered towards Draco.
"Did you want anything? I can call her back."
"No, thank you," he coughed out. "I think I will go to bed." He made as if to leave, but found his path blocked, when Bellatrix slammed the parlour doors closed with her wand.
"No, no, no, Drakey Poo! We're sharing a drink, remember?"
Bellatrix's sing-song voice rang out. Middy brought the calming draught, magazine, and scones. Tiffy brought the wine. Bellatrix tore into a scone with her greying teeth and swigged the wine, smacking her lips. A bit of pink-coloured scone crumb dribbled from her mouth. Draco was again reminded of Walburga Black and suppressed a shudder. After a few moments of uncomfortable silence, Bellatrix piped up again.
"Ah, but Draco, we've entirely forgotten to show Mummy your new decoration."
He stilled, holding a mouthful of wine in his clamped jaw, trying to convince himself to swallow it. Without a word, Bellatrix pointed her wand at his arm and yelled, "Defendo!" He jerked back instinctively from the cutting curse, but she'd only cut off his sleeve, exposing the dark mark to the room. Draco briefly wondered why Lord Voldemort had not just done that, instead of making Draco roll up his own sleeve. Perhaps it was a way to make the mark-taker feel that they had chosen the mark, or perhaps Voldemort's magic just wasn't strong enough, he mused. Narcissa, whose tears had only just subsided, began crying anew. Draco slept until nearly nightfall the next day, almost 16 hours straight, so he awoke to numerous messages on his handkerchief. He was thankful that he'd left it on his nightstand. If it had fallen out of his robe when he tossed the garment on the floor at Riddle House, he didn't know what he'd do. Her messages to him started out calm, but grew steadily more frantic. She said the time every time she'd written. She had clearly been watching the clock. "It's midnight now. I hope you're all right. 3 a.m. Did you get home yet? 5:30 a.m. I'm going to sleep. Please message me when you see these. It's 6:30 now. Turns out I was lying about sleeping. Are you okay? What happened? Draco, it's just after 10 o'clock in the morning. I slept a little, but I'm worried you're not reading the messages."
It's almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Where are you?" "Draco, please answer." As he held the handkerchief in his hands, it warmed once more. "Draco, my handkerchief turned cool. You got my messages. I'm sorry to send so many. I was just so worried." He cleared his throat and choked out a reply. "I'm here, back at the manor. I'm all right." But he wasn't all right. There was a heavy throb in his left arm. It felt as though it weighed 100 pounds. It hurt to move his entire body. "What did he make you do?" Draco did not know what to say. A part of him knew that keeping secrets from her would be the beginning of bad faith, and he didn't want that for them, to have secrets of this magnitude. On the other hand, he felt defiled, dirty, sullied. And if he felt that way about himself, how could she feel any differently about him? How could she allow herself to be defiled and sullied by an association with him? She should want nothing to do with him, and he would not blame her if she never spoke to him again. But secrets could destroy so much, and he would not let it destroy them. They would do whatever it took to overcome it. He opened his mouth, intending to tell her what now graffitied his arm, but his tongue locked into place, pressed against the roof of his mouth. His brows knitted together in confusion. He took a breath, then tried to start again, intending to speak a different phrase with the same information, but his tongue was locked. He realized with dawning horror that Voldemort, in addition to mocking him as a servant of the darkness, had also placed a secrecy bond upon him. He would not be able to write or speak about anything that had happened in Little Hangleton last night, and he couldn't even say that he couldn't speak of it. He tried a different tack, saying, "There is nothing to talk about. Please, don't let it worry you." A reply came back immediately. "What do you mean? Of course there's something to talk about. Of course I'm worried." "Please, Hermione, there was nothing. Let's talk about something else. When can I see you again?" There was a long moment's pause before she replied again. "We will see each other at Hogwarts in just a few weeks." That was too long to wait. "That's too long to wait. Are you going into Diagon Alley for supplies before school this year?" "Yes, I believe we're going in about a week." "Message me when you know the date. I'll be there."
"Draco, we're not going to be able to meet up. I'm going to have Harry and the entire Weasley clan with me. Not to mention, a third of Hogwarts will be there."
"I know. I just want to see you." Just putting his eyes upon her, assuring himself that she was still alive, would be enough.
"Okay, I love you."
"I love you so much, Hermione."
Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Handkerchief by Great78.